In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to create your own exception object so that you can throw it. Unlike most of my lessons, I'm not going to be doing a lot of coding here just because it's somewhat complex. Instead, I'm going to show you several programs and then you can see from that how it works. So first, let's take a look at a list class. So I have a list class that I'm going to work with, and this is the class that could throw the exception. And it simply is a way to encapsulate the array list class. So I import Java util array list. I create a new array list of string for names. That's all it's going to do. We ought to call it name list, but I didn't call it that. I have one constructor that creates my new array list of string type. I have an add method to add a new name to this list class. And then I have a display method. And notice what I have here. Before I show you that, let me say what happens. What I want it to do is I want it to display the names in the list. Otherwise, I want it to throw a exception if the size of the list is 0. I'll finish out the code here in just a second. So here's what I have. I have if names.size equals 0, throw new empty list exception. That's going to be my custom exception. Notice what you have to do. The compiler has to know that it's possible that this method can throw an exception, so you have to include throws empty list exception at the beginning of the method name. Now let me finish this out real quick. And that's all I wanted to do. But we're not going to get to that point. Oh, we might. So, we are clearly saying that if the size of the array list is empty, we're going to throw, or 0, we're going to throw an empty list exception. So let's go find that class. First, let me compile this, make sure it's okay. So, here's my empty list exception. Let's open it. Simplicity itself. All we have to do is we have to inherit from exception, and we have a constructor that simply is going to say can't display an empty list. System out print line. You can write that to other places. You can send it to the system error object. A lot of different things you can do, but to keep things simple, that's all I did. Compile it again, and it's fine. So to test my work, I wrote a simple test program, create a new list of names, and then try to display it before I've added any. So let's compile, close, and then run this. And there's my empty list exception. Let's go back to our test. Let's add a name. Let's add 2 names. Let's compile. Let's close, and then we'll run. Well, looks like we didn't get our output. Let's see if we can figure out where it went. It's not here. There it is. So it sent it to its own output window. I just had it going a little bit differently than I normally do. Let's put this back into our code. Let's bring that back up. It just didn't pop up automatically like it usually does. So there's our output, Cynthia and Jennifer, which are the 2 names I added. And again, the reason they didn't appear, or the exception didn't appear, was because the list was not empty. So an exception class or exception object can be built by extending the exception class, and then you can throw it as you want. The key, though, is to understand that, oh, I forgot to mention also, let's take a look here real quick. In my test program, at main, I have to tell it that it could throw the empty list exception. And again, you'll get errors. If you take that out and try to compile this program, then it'll give you an error saying it must be caught or declared to be thrown. So let's do one more thing before we leave this. Let's close this out. Let's put this in a try catch. And then we'll be finished with this topic. Whoops. So we're going to write try close the try, add a catch, little message to tell us what happens. Let's compile. Compile's good. Now let's run the program again. Oops. Now we see both. We see the original message that it displayed from the exception object, and then we see what happens in our catch part when it says tried to display an empty list. So with that, we wrap up this lesson on creating your own custom exception objects.